Lori Brooks will not be with us tonight, and I don't know if anybody else has any time constraints. Mr. Burnside step out, and sometimes he does.
Okay, well, we can hold off. If he comes back, we'll ask. All right, Kurt?
We're just missing Jill.
And Tina Sarah has a 5:45 time constraint.
And Shay may need to step out as well.
Okay,
Dr. Shaker is not here, but I did not hear from him as not being able to be here, so he may be tied up in a meeting.
okay. Okay, with that, minutes from last week or 2 weeks ago. Anybody have anything? I don't see any hands going up, so can we approve the minutes, please, from April 11th, was it? All right, thank you. All right, with the minutes approved, we left last time on Article 10, but I understand that Ross has some information for Article 12, so do we want to do that first tonight?
So we can do that. I know we had some conversations. I mean, and you're aware, we had a meeting scheduled to go to the board and present what, we, after our conversation about Article 10, but we had to postpone that until this Friday. So that's why we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
So if we won, Mr. Dodig had gone through Article 12 and did some reorganization, if we want to kind of put that up and take a look at least the reorganization of the article.
Sounds like a good plan. We've been talking about Article 12 for a long time.
Okay, so all I didn't obviously add or change any language. And I think I did, if you go down, I think I did add the word short-term to military versus long-term leave for military. And then I just basically listed the types of leave we have in order. So from what essentially goes from D all the way down to, let's see, I. And then under domestic violence leave, and then we go to threat assessments for domestic violence leave, and then it goes on basically to the other sections of the chapter or the article. I did add under request for leave the language that we had all agreed on, I don't know, a few years ago regarding any leave of 10 or more consecutive days, blah, blah, blah. So, which was already in the contract. So there's nothing new here, it's just reorganized. And after that, it all stayed the same. So, yeah, it's still on.
Okay.
So can you do me a favor and go to the place where it talks about like abusive leave or something? I don't know if that's you know what I'm talking about?
Go to number 8. Yeah, I'm not controlling.
Okay, yeah, the other version, thanks. And I'm not sure how this kind of changed.
Right there.
Yeah, so, and maybe it's not here, but I just remember looking at it and going, that's weird. So, and this may be somewhere else, right? The idea that one absence is now abuse of leave. And I thought I saw that somewhere, and that seemed to be different. Because I know because some teachers have been saying that they miss the day and the principal is getting ridiculous. And I mean, I know they're having, and I don't know where it is, so.
Is it before holiday?
No, that's something that's a training thing. Yeah, Kurt tells me past practice was 3 days.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sound that smart, but I think in here.
It says it in 8A there. You go back up. It says 3 days. Look at that.
So 8A talks about AWOL,
Right.
But if you go up in abusive leave, it says any absence that results in a disruption to the education environment. So that could be as little as 1 day.
And some principals are.
Okay.
Some principals are the any idea, and so,
Ron wants to respond.
yeah, go ahead. And
Do we have, I guess we probably just need to go back, do we have any idea of when this particular article was addressed? Was it last year, the year before?
well, I think we, will be right,
Will.
yeah, 2 or 3 years ago,
We
we did.
negotiated that language.
Yeah, so, the theory was always, right, they had to tell you were abusing leave before you were able to abuse leave, but there have been instances where people have called me and said, I missed a day, and they're saying that, and this appears to back that up, so, I think a return to kind of common sense around this idea.
Right.
I mean, I know they're having meetings with people, which doesn't bother me, right?
Yeah.
I think, if you're, and usually the standard is if you're using days quicker than you're accruing them, right? That's usually what kind of generates the meeting, and so I know they're having meetings with people, but the idea that where it says any absence that disrupts the setting, which,
Yeah.
we found out that 3 phone calls to a school disrupts the setting, on any particular issue sometimes. So kind of a conversation around what that looks like, that replaces the word any, but doesn't necessarily purely restrict the amount. I mean, that doesn't have to be done tonight, because I just brought it up, because
No,
as we were looking at it, I'm like, oh shoot, this has happened this year.
I mean, are you okay with, maybe we go back over the last couple contracts and see where there was a change?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could review what we had before, and again, like, this article was shown to all of us, and all of us thumbed up it, and we ratified it by the whole unit, but then all of a sudden, it started to be any, and I was like, oh, 1 day, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I think that's fine.
Okay, take a look at that. Anything else? Yes, Herb.
How about terminal pay? Was that addressed in this article? We spoke about the statute and the districts not being held to that statute. I thought that was in Article 12 as well.
Yeah, but I don't think we have an agreement on that.
Okay.
So, I didn't change that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the question was around the legislation, because there was legislation, and I thought we determined that the particular legislation that requires the 10-year vested, or whatever you put it, the requirement of 10 years being vested in the FRS, did we determine that the legislation at this point only applies to secondary, or post-secondary?
That is correct. 101261 only applies to those that are employed by the state university system.
Okay, I don't know that we've ever brought that up here.
I think I just mentioned it, not at the last session, but the one before when Kevin wasn't here, because we left the prior session with an ask that we reach out to our council.
Right.
And that was that was the advice we received.
Okay, so we can just have that reflected in the notes.
Did you see that? Yeah. It's still on. Okay, so Kurt, just, I'm not trying to correct you, but 101261 is the statute that is the education statute regarding sick leave. The statute, I think, that I asked your council to look at, I don't have it in front of me, but it's 100 something.
I'm saying about 122.
Thank you, Amy. So, Anna,
It's
whatever.
in that, it's in, looking at it on that document.
And we need to have further, I'm just gonna say it out loud, our team needs to have further discussion about this, so, because we also have a board policy that reflects that. So, you understand?
Okay. I'm aware of that, yes.
Okay, so that needs further discussion. Kevin?
That's all.
If we change, that was loud. If we change the CBA, doesn't that mean the board policy has to comply?
No, not necessarily.
So,
CDA supersedes the,
right,
but we need to talk.
okay.
More than one group to talk.
Yeah, gotcha, okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right, right, so it sounds like we still have a couple of things to iron out here for 12, but thanks for the work you've done, Rod.
And that wasn't the reason I even reorganized it.
No,
The reorganization was just because I thought it was a mess, frankly, nothing against Will.
well, it's been a mess for quite a while, before Will, after Will, during Will,
It's helpful for me to just look at how many different types of leave we have, I mean, you know.
yeah. Anything else? All right,
Do we want to hit since we're on leave, do we want to talk about the data that you collected, or we
Yeah.
collected?
Yeah, the shared sick leave, I can, I know Amy, has access to it, let me find it.
In the data requesting.
Yeah, I just can't, here we go. I can't share my screen, but I can give you the percentages. Oh, I think no, I added it there. Yeah, that one there, the first one.
That one?
Yeah, I forgot I did that. There you go. So I'm gonna allow someone who is not color deficient to explain the different ones because I keep messing them up. While she's doing that, I keep forgetting this is really loud. I closed the survey today. We opened it on March the 24th. I think the last couple of submissions, there were 3 on April 7th, so it hasn't even been touched since April 7th. We've had, as you'll see there, a little over 1,100 responses. So that's about a fifth of bargaining unit. And then they responded as you see on the screen.
okay.
You want me to just kind of go through that, since I can see the colors?
Thank you.
I may mess the colors up here, but, so out of 1,129 responses, in blue, those that selected would be interested in participating in a sick leave bank would be 9% of those 1,129 responses. A shared sick leave, which is in red, 30.6% responded that they would be interested in participating. 36.9% indicated that they would be interested in participating in both a sick leave bank or a shared sick leave. And 23.5% of the respondents indicated that they would not participate in either a sick leave bank or a shared sick leave.
Interesting. Okay, anything else to add to that, Kevin?
I just think for me, it's important to note that, what is it, 77% of the people that responded are interested in some form of kind of leave that's outside of the days that they get from the district. And so I think we need to do something. If we're talking about the sick leave bank, I think we have to look at the spout language and figure out what the minimum number of participants is. Because 9% said they wanted it, it doesn't mean 9% are gonna sign up. I think we have to have that conversation about what's the minimum kind of threshold to even open one. But certainly, 76% or whatever of the respondents want something beyond the 10 days. So I think it's imperative on both of those organizations to kind of find a path forward in this.
Kirk?
So as we were looking at the spout language, because the TALC bank was closed a number of years ago, I'm curious if you have any info on it. Is it solvent? Do you know what the membership looks like? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, because in this spout CBA, it says that if either membership in the sick leave pool or the number of days fall below 300 is discontinued. So I'm just curious, are there more than 300 people in it? And how successful has it been?
Amy?
And I don't have that information in front of me, but I can get it and bring it back.
And it may also, sorry, jump back in line.
That's
It may
all right.
also be helpful to know when the last time days were taken from people and donated to the bank. That was one of the reasons for the downfall of the TALC sick leave bank, days were just never taken, so I'm interested in that too.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other information to share, Kerr? From the survey, okay,
It was just one question.
just that one,
Yes.
okay.
I'll add this after the meeting.
Okay. Anything else we need to clarify, ask questions, talk about tonight? I know there were some requests last meeting about Article 10. Go ahead, Kevin.
Have you guys had the opportunity to kind of cost out the two different types of new around the typical assembly we have? The rental and the bereavement? Do you have a chance to maybe figure out actuarially prevalence of how much?
I know we got numbers, but I'm not sure that we determine what the actual cost. Like the number of bereavement days that we had. And didn't we have that uploaded to the?
We have the date that we had in the file.
Do you know if those days are separated by employee group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did do that. We separated by,
I mean, I would assume TALC probably has the most because we're the biggest group, but when we talk about cost, it's kind of important to me that we talk about
Yes.
the impact of us versus the impact of other people.
The one chart you shared that was given to you?
yes.
That's what you have to read.
And this is like people that self-reported as bereavement leave, right? Because that's the only way we know how, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, were you talking about FMLA? I'm sorry.
Yes.
The, parental leave?
Well, we used the FMLA to determine the parental leave, how many of our employees, and it's broken down by group. As far as over the last 3 years, I think it was, we tried to determine how many employees actually used parental leave as part of their FMLA request.
So do we have numbers on bereavement too, or just the parental? Just the parental.
All right, so over the last 4 years, is that just bereavement here? Okay, so over the last 4 years, the average looks like just over 400,000. So in 500,000.
Is that days or cost?
That's the cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that's a lot of days. We have a lot of employees, so but that's a lot of days when we've got 10,000 employees.
So starting in 21, 22, 563,000 and odd change. 22, 23, 460,000 or 461,000. Oh, we're doing with the benefits. I'm sorry, let me do that again. So 21, 22, with benefits, the cost would be 591,900, so 592,000. In 22, 23, 496,000. 23, 24, 459,000. And then up to date currently 366,000 for this year.
366.
So about 500, about a half a million a year.
That's, what type of leave?
Bereavement.
Thank you.
And so I guess the next deepest question that you may not be ready to do today is, like, do we know the average request per incident? And like, okay, we know the total number of days in addition to the total number of costs, we kind of figure out an average kind of per day amount, or we just want to say 500, 600 grand is the top end. I mean, you kind
Yeah,
of
we don't know the number of day, but I don't know if we can can we research that?
I don't know either, but because we were talking about, because somebody may have put in for an incident that happened, in Oregon and needed to take more than 3 days. And so I don't know if we want to look at, like, if each person had 3 days, how much that would cost, because that's what we're actually talking about maybe giving people. And so that might be a more accurate reflection of total cost.
Right.
Just.
So we want to gather actually the number of incidents times 3.
Yeah, the average cost per day of events.
Yep.
And then the number of incidents times 3 times the average cost of the day. Because like I said, some people may take 1, some people may, just depending on where they're going and kind of what their level of responsibility is around, the horrific events that they're having to deal with.
Per day.
Yeah. If we know how many people did it, and we give them each 3 days, and then we figure out how much it is per day, we can get kind of the cost of the average per year based on 3 days per incident. If that's where we're going, or we can go to 5 or 2, but at least we'll have the ability to handle it on a per day amount when we start talking about the cost.
Okay, anything else? Kevin?
Yeah, can we do the same thing with the maternity/paternity leave request? Because I know sometimes, happily Jill is out on, maternity leave, taking her full 12 weeks. And if we cost that out as an incident, or any other parent that does it, right, that's gonna be a big number. And so I think we need to find the cost per day average for that too. And that might be a tougher thing, because at some point they're cashing in sick time or not cashing in sick time. So we can better build a number, a more accurate number, until we get it in the face.
So I do have the number of, this is a gross total of employees taking maternity or paternity leave by year. So TALC, in 22-23, there were 120 employees. In 23-24, 137, 24-25, to date, 101. So give or take 125.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so is that, and I think the definition changed about people who could take it and why, and I'm not sure how many years ago that was, that might have been under Obama. Foster parents, adopted parents, that kind of thing.
Right.
Are those numbers reflective of a conservative definition of, mother and father, or, and we may not know.
Yeah, the only option I believe we have in our FMLA application is if it's either maternity or paternity leave.
Okay, so again, it could encompass a broader definition based on expanded federal eligibility.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe if legal knows that, but I would think over the last 3 years, it's been fairly consistent.
Okay, all right, cool.
Okay, Rob?
So I know, the last time FMLA was amended, looks like it was, well, because of COVID in 2020, but then before that, 2012. So the law's been the same pretty much for a decade.
All right, anything else?
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Okay. Anything else you received that you have questions on or need clarification on? I know Amy said she did send out some things.
My links are on here. Sure. That's how they send it.
Okay.
If there's none of those, Article 12, we need to get some more information on a couple of things. We're kind of at a standstill unless somebody has some proposals that Ron can talk to the board about. It's coming in. Rob, thank you. Go ahead.
So earlier I was looking at our commitments that we had agreed upon. And in our commitments, we have assuming good intentions, begin and end on time, respect the process, and maintain transparency. At the beginning of the school year, when we all met for our interest-based training, we had agreed upon doing bargaining a little bit differently, asking these questions, finding answers. I think we've done a fairly great job at that. However, I'm also frustrated at the same time. I usually take pretty good notes. So I had written down in my notes for our next steps when we started talking a little bit about compensation at the end of the budget presentation. I have written down, what other info do people need to see and understand? How can we work together to facilitate our compensation conversation? What information can we share with the board? And how do we get more engagement around budget? And then we kind of talked about, we listed a little basic list about what we wanted to do. Increase starting pay, compression, longer workday, supply money, re-up in January, special centers, turnaround money, and supplements. And I know Kevin mentioned that we kind of had this idea of building a plan around compensation that we wanted to accomplish. And I just do not feel like that is what we are here to do. This is at least the third session that we are not able to sit and have great conversations until 7 o'clock. The last session, we even decided to add additional sessions. In order, we added a session on Thursday, we talked about Monday, and then we had potentially another session on Tuesday. It's a large commitment to be a part of this bargaining team, and when we are not able to do the work of interest-based bargaining, I just don't feel like time is being honored. And that is frustrating. And I understand there was supposed to be a meeting with the board with the executive session that now had to get pushed back. But I just don't feel that we are here or doing what we said that we were going to do, that we were going to build a presentation, come up with some options, agreed upon things that would then be presented to the board. So that is just something, as when I look at maintain transparency, I want to make sure that I'm being transparent with expectations of this bargaining team. It takes a lot to rearrange schedules, to do additional time to come to this table, not to mention many turnaround meetings that we've had. We've been in committee meeting. My whole week is fulfilled with commitments that revolve around bargaining, and yet we come to this table and we're not taking full advantage of our time here. And I think that that should be addressed.
Anybody?
I'm going to say something. I'm not going to say something. Sorry, no sidebars, but sidebars. Yeah, so I mean, again, like we mentioned the other time, I think we need to build a plan together, right? And so part of this is, if we want to talk about bereavement and kind of, paternity/paternity, whatever leave you want to call it, that's aligned with a number, right? That's aligned with a number. So I think we need to really I mean, if this were chart paper, right, it'd just be writing the line down and writing the number next to it. And so I think we need, because again, Anna's right, we got tonight and we have Thursday, and there's no way we're gonna get the research. I think we need to deal with 12 before Thursday. And the executive session is Friday. Not that I think we need to go to the board on Friday and say, you guys go to the board on Friday and say, hey, this is the total number, right? But at least the idea of prioritizing and putting a cost. So like in my mind, and I've shared this before, the idea of, a raise in starting pay. Like we could say, for every $1,000 in starting pay, raise, it costs the equivalent. And then at some point, I think we talk about what our priorities are. And, and we say, well, we both decided that we want to raise starting pay $3,000. That costs this. We decided we wanted to do the bereavement pay. That costs this. We wanted to do the maternity pay. That costs this. And all the little things, we want to add FMTC and the other center school to the center school bonus. And, don't even get me started on we want to do something with supplements. We want to do something with, advanced degree, which we're going to have information on here soon. And we want to do something on these other, just regular raises. And so I think it's important to go to the board with that kind of checklist and see and tell them, I've said it before, we're writing a big invoice with what we want to do. But until we write it down, it's all theoretical. Because again, last year, we can talk about they get more per person or whatever. Collier came up with $10 million more for half as many staff members last year. And life is not fair. And I've said this before this year too, that the inability of the district to have the political will to find a localized funding source to offset the money the state doesn't give us is not the problem of the employee. And when we talk about advanced degrees, if I'm not getting an advanced degree here, but Collier is easy to pay, now all of a sudden that's a $9,000 difference. Because it's $7,000 on salary alone and $2,000 on advanced degree. So, we really need to write the big invoice and ask for the big amount. And if some things if a $3,000 raise in starting pay takes 2 years to accomplish, well, then that's what we agree to for 2 years. And then everything else, but until we write it down, until we sit here and do that, and we have the time tonight to do it, and possibly kind of nail our priorities, because I know there's a desire to perhaps compensate teachers who teach tested subjects a little more. For me, that's the ultimate cherry on the top. Because, everybody should be making enough money before we start talking about that. Because I'll say the tested subject teacher would be less stressful if there was a highly qualified teacher in K1 and 2 in every group to move the kids where they need to be. And a third grade teacher probably didn't have to do remediation or stuff like that. So I think that's kind of where this is coming from, and the idea that we do construct differently. I mean, I also honestly think we probably maybe have blown the timeline for what we need to have stuff accomplished. But we'll see. But I think we all need to go to the board like we agreed to, with the idea that we're asking for this to do these things with it specifically, and ask them to fund the entire package. And if they say, oh, we can't do 70, but we can do 50, or we can't do 50, we can do 40, we can come in here and pair off 10, and together get a package that's good for everybody and accomplishes all of our goals. I think that's where I'm at. And I think Kerr wanted to say something too. Oh, no, he's good. He's bailing out.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of a newer experience as well from what typically happened here, where, we came to bargaining with an authority that the board gave us. And so this was an attempt to gather some feedback first and set what those priorities are. And that's the full intention, is to go with all of the conversations that we've had about, what the interests are. And those are all written down and will be presented to the board as far as what that is. And I think, there will be an example of what some of those interests call. We haven't talked about any numbers yet, other than the priorities. So, if that's the TALC's, one of their proposals would be to raise the minimum salary by $3,000, then that would be part of what we would consider at that point. And then what does the cost of living increase across the board look like for that? And all of those other priorities. Obviously, we have the risk level for the turnaround committee, the risk levels that we determine what schools need additional funding at that point or additional compensation. So all of that has been taken into consideration, I think, and will be presented to the board accordingly. Whatever else you think we need to, I'm certainly not opposed to at all. Just, that's open for discussion. How do you want to go about doing that?
I think after you came back from your caucus last time, because you had a whole laundry list of things, then you caucused, didn't you come back with your priorities?
Yes.
After that caucus, I believe it's in the minutes.
It might be, but I'm not sure I included like maternity, paternity, bereavement, you know what I mean?
Right, well, let's look back at the minutes and.
Yeah, actually, I added, because you came back and I actually added that again. I said, don't forget, we have to add bereavement, paternal, and the cost of whatever the terminal paid to adjust that language.
Okay.
So I think we have all of the interests on paper, and, what we haven't done is really just said, what are we considering as far as the amounts that are within those interests?
Right.
So I guess I kind of just took it as, hey, these are the interests, this is our budget, and board would then give us feedback on what they think the authority should be at that point, and then we gotta figure out how to divvy it up.
Iris.
In terms of amounts, do we know, with regards to the restructuring, do we know what percentage of that 20 million that was saved is going to be put towards compensation? Do we have that type of information?
That's a good question, and depending again on how you look at that, I mean, we all know what we're looking at from the budget proposals about the increases that, we're planning on taking a look at, which, really I think we were anywhere from like 1% down to 0.3% was the increase, which would have been $12 million. So, that aside would be, anything that we are putting at this point would be part of whatever's been saved in the reserve balance.
Anybody else? So do we need to relook at those priorities that were listed in the minutes from last time, or? Okay, let's do it.
That's a segue into 10, right? 10 is compensation.
Yep.
So one of the questions I asked related to how much the district budgets for benefits, and I think I showed the district summary budget where we calculated it was around 39%, but I think in the presentation you mentioned it was 21.5%. We're able to look at that and see why it appears that it's so much more in the budget.
Yes, I see, my note right here for exhibit K1 on page 2 is what you were showing me. And I apologize, I didn't bring that information with me, but I'll be able to, speak to it on Thursday, if we meet on Thursday.
I think the total percentage of salary and benefits was like just under 70, but 69% for salaries and benefits. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the presentation.
No, it appeared that the amount that was budgeted for benefits is 39% of the salary amount. But in here, we discuss it's in the 20s, so that's why I asked the question.
I can answer that. So the benefits would include group insurance, the board contributed health insurance, that's $10,300 per year per employee. So that, as a percentage, that could vary per employee, like a para,
that would be a higher percent, maybe 40% of their benefits, right? Between the retirement, FICA, which is the 21.28% that you referenced, and then the board contributed health insurance. So that's why it's higher on the AFR.
So it's more than just like a bad quarter.
Yeah, and to get a little more deeper than that, like, we use just the regular FRS contribution rate when we budget at 13.67%, I think it is this year, but of course, some employees are in drop, which is a much higher rate, so it does kind of vary.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Any more on the priorities that are listed up here? Is that comprehensive enough, or is it, Kevin?
I have another question of savings.
Okay.
The extra half an hour that the district was doing, that they are no longer going to do next year, do we know how much money that saved?
Approximately 3.3 million.
So all the employees that were doing the extra half an hour that aren't any longer, it's a $3.3 million savings.
That was, well, the additional half an hour for all of the people who had previously done it before was budgeted at $3.3 million, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, clarifications needed? Kevin?
So, I mean, I think at this point, I'd like to, not necessarily being a proposal, but at least like getting some kind of numbers down on paper, right? So, and like I said, if we had the old chart paper, it'd be really easy, but like, one of the priorities, like, the increase to the starting pay. I'd like to see maybe something that says for every $1,000, it costs this amount of money, right? And then we do paternity leave, it costs this amount of money. We do the 3 days bereavement, it costs this much money. Actually start putting numbers on these things, and like the advanced degree, if we decide to change how we do things, it costs this much money. Just so we start to build that kind of idea of what this is, because it is so different. Usually we just get a number and say, well, this will be 11% for these people and 5% for these people, and we kind of work it that way. And so, kind of building a menu around the total cost, and us asking the board, well, this is what,
Right.
It costs $3 million to do $1,000. I know it costs more, right? But it costs $3 million to do $1,000. We want to do $3,000, so that's $9 million. Well, they say, well, hey, let's do, $6 million, right? So we do $2,000, right? The idea that they have how much it costs and what we want, and then what they're willing to finance, I guess, and then we can go from there, because it's so different.
So we know as part of Amy's presentation, so we know the percentage, whatever the percentage increase is in the bargaining authority, whatever we want to call it these days. So for every percent, it's 4.3 million.
Yeah.
We have that. So that's one thing we have. So if we're looking at the percent across the board for all employees, that's.
But we're not building a package like that this year. We're building a package with like bereavement leave that costs money that not everybody may take this year.
Right.
So I don't think we can just say it's going to be a 6 or 12% across the board, because that's like the raise portion for me is it. But then all this other ancillary stuff that we're kind of doing individually that costs money that will have to be in the total board authority number. Right. But I don't think should be counted as like 6% across the board. Because if we say 1% is $3 million, well, that's cool, but 1% isn't $1,000, 2%, around 2% is $1,000. So, like, I think we gotta start thinking about it differently, as opposed to it's a 4% across the board, because there's stuff in here that's not gonna be pure salary, perhaps, in the idea of bereavement and maternal and paternal leave and other stuff. So, I think it's a number kind of partitioned off on the way we want to do it. I mean, let's say we cost it out as 50, board says 40, okay, so we do, instead of 3,000 new salary, we do two, that saves us $9 million. And so we still make the total package work for the number.
Go ahead, Amy.
So we're trying to put together those things. At the top of the list, it talked about starting salary. You said something related to $1,000 per person or something. Like, so if we're trying to cost out something, to me, it seems like it would be, we'd have to name an amount, I'm thinking, right? Because if the starting salary is now $50,500, if it becomes $51,000 or $51,500, right? If we add 1,000 to that, then only those people who are less than that come up to that, right? In order of the calculation to determine, well, how much is that? But if it's adding 3,000, then it's more people underneath that. So maybe I'm not understanding.
No, everybody's getting $1,000. If we raise it to 51.5, you currently make 52, you're making 53. So I think we address it as the cost of adjusting the starting salary by $1,000 is this much money, and that's reflective of giving all 5,800 people that $1,000.
Okay, but that's a different question, is what I'm saying. That's not the cost of adjusting the starting salary. That's the cost of just giving an X amount per person, which is not the same as the starting salary. So that's why I was asking for a clarification there. Those are really two different things.
Yeah, okay, I get where you're coming from.
Okay.
But yeah, I would be interested in the bigger number because again, we're trying to fight compression. And so, but I think we need to just have the idea that if we raise the starting pay by $10,000, everybody's getting that $10,000 because we desperately don't want to do what we were forced to do several years ago, which is jam the floor up and not be able to spread that throughout everybody in the bargaining unit. So when I say cost of 1,000, we could in parentheses probably put starting salary because that's kind of where the impact is going to be. Because again, that's not the raise either. The raise isn't an adjustment to starting salary. That's a compression number. I mean, it goes through everybody.
It's not the raise,
No.
It's an increase in compensation.
Only to offset the compression by raising the starting pay.
Which is an increase in compensation.
But it's not, no, it's sliding the scale. It's not a raise. It slides the scale.
Anyway,
So,
an increase in compensation.
Right, so a raise for me, I worked the whole year.
I don't think, if I can finish.
Okay.
I don't think that we have to take it all into account to parse it out and be like, well, this isn't really a salary increase, but this is. It's all an increase to compensation. Is my only point.
Which is where I think we label things differently. I mean, the raise, right, the year we had to move everybody up, that crushed 13 years of essentially experience. People above 13 years still got a raise. I mean, I think we need to have this idea that if we raise starting pay and pass it through to everybody, that's not the raise. The raise is because I worked a year, not because we decided to move the bottom up. If we decide to move the bottom up, everybody gets moved up, and then we talk about raises, traditional raises on top of that. And for me, just because it's listed first doesn't mean it's the first priority. It came out of my mouth first. And if we're not going to be able to do traditional raises, and we're going to say 1,000 of that $3,000 raise you got is the same $1,000 that nobody's ever worked for the district before, nah, that's not a raise. That's a $2,000 raise and a $1,000 compression offset.
Well, that's a perspective.
Okay, well, that's the perspective of this side of the table. Right. So it's not a perspective, it's the perspective.
I'm on this side.
So it's your perspective. Welcome to the perspective.
Well, I didn't know what perspective it was.
Correct.
Put an option up. Option one, $1,000 increase to everyone in the school district. And I'm sorry, thank you, in the bargaining unit, sorry, we're talking about the whole district. So as of the data that we received on April the 14th, the bargaining unit size is 5946. So that's about $6 million for a $1,000 increase with benefits. It puts it at $7.25 million. A little rough math. There's option one. And if we want to pass this would effectively raise the starting salary by $1,000. We wouldn't get to Hendry yet. We need a little bit more to get to Hendry, which just in.
You said 7.1 million.
I wasn't gonna say that on the mic. I'm sorry. 7.250 roughly. This is 0.254, but. So if we wanted to do $2,000 increase, everybody, it'd be two of these, just to make it very easy. I hear in the corner, how much would it cost to move us to Hendry? If we gave everybody I don't even know what the difference is, it's about $2,000. It's about 15 million to move everybody, $2,000 or so to get to Hendry starting pay. But this at least gives us something to kind of start with.
So that's,
What I'm hearing, that's for everybody, that's increasing the starting salary plus.
That is
across the
correct.
board.
As President Daley said, however many years ago, when we moved the starting salary from 37 or 38 to 47.3, a lot of people got squished. And so we have to balance recruitment and attracting new employees to retaining the ones we have. Right. And if we keep increasing the starting place and not moving everybody with it, it makes people feel a whole certain way. I feel it the work I do. Compression affects us all. And so we're trying to, this doesn't fix all of that, but it's a start or a piece.
Kevin?
I think for me, this is about writing it down and seeing the work we have left to do. If we don't write down that to get to Henry, it costs us $15.5 million this year, we won't ever know what it costs us to get to Hendry. At some point, people who have the ability to make decisions one night a month need to understand that their inaction or whatever has real consequences. I mean, it takes $15.5 million or whatever to move everybody in the bargaining unit $2,000. And that's what I said before. Typical bargaining authority is $25 million. So 15 of that only gets us to Hendry. So at some point, which is why the 10 million extra that Collier got, for whatever reason, and I'm going to be honest with you, the presentation was great, I understand it better now, but the 5,800 teaching employees and bargaining unit members don't care. Don't care. They don't have sympathy for that. Just like we talk about insurance all the time. They want insurance that is inexpensive and high quality. They don't care because they work and they deserve insurance. So we really have to start writing these numbers down and looking at them, because I'm not sure what we would have to do to have the same effect as $10 million in Collier County did. If Collier gave 10, maybe we got to figure out 17. But we fell behind them further, and we're going to fall behind them again. And it's because we're not writing numbers down and having these honest conversations about how far behind we are and how much money it will really take to fix these problems and get us competitive. Because I'm telling you, I said it before, if I worked HR for Collier, you wouldn't have a single employee from a sterile on down between 5 and 10 years of experience. I'd get you for $7, $8 grand a person on their school district email. Come work for Team Collier. And if they give 10, we gotta give 17. Well, we only ever give 24 or 25 total. So that would be 17 on top of the 24 or 25 to make it dent in 1 year's fall behind Collier. So again, this for me is an exercise in writing down the actual numbers and having this conversation and us as a team going to the board and saying, it's time to do something. These are the real numbers. Because again, I'm still taken aback by the idea that a board member called me out when the board member gave me $10 million less to negotiate, and the raises weren't as robust as they were the year before. Clearly, there's some explaining. So this for me is an exercise in really writing down the numbers that the ideal things we want to do are going to cost us and telling people exactly that. And then they'll make the decision about how much they prioritize the staff they have working for them.
Okay.
I just wanted to provide some dates to kind of what Kevin had said. In FY '20, our starting salary was $40,500. And due to state law, we had to only use the money for base salary increases that year. So in 2021, it went up to $47,300, which then created us this compression situation that we are in, that we have worked very hard to undo the last several different bargaining sessions. So that's kind of, I think, where the idea, which is a little different, that if we increase the base, that increase is then given to everyone throughout the instructional unit in order to not continue to create compression issues.
Okay. Anybody else?
John, I'll throw one more data point out.
Okay.
All right, just one more data point out, wow, that didn't come out right. I wanted to throw one more data point out. Collier County, their starting salary is $57,500. It would take us, according to my math here, with benefits, this would be recurring, about $51 million just to catch up to Collier. And so as Kevin said, I'm glad we're having this conversation and putting this down. Because I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, but I mean, until we do, these are all fictitious things that are out there. 57.5, Amy.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Is that just doing starting salaries for that?
That would be just moving everybody, yeah, just moving the starting pay up and passing that through to everybody. As a compression offset.
Is that the only option?
You wanna talk about tonight, or you wanna talk about the other priority, the other?
No, I mean, I think we can run them all, right? Like, let's add paternity, maternity, and kind of cost it out a little less than what you guys have, because we figure it's probably, it's not day, we don't have the per day, per person, so we can't say this many people times 3 days at this cost, but let's cost it out high, we can always adjust and bring it back low. So let's do bereavement, paternity, maternity, then let's talk, let's cost them out, because this is gonna be a big invoice.
You want me to put it on a spreadsheet?
I don't care.
Go ahead, Iris.
So also adding to that, maybe doing a data request for how much it would cost to bring up special instructional to an equitable professional supplemental level. Currently, there's some disparages there, like psychologists make like a substantial amount more than all the other special instructional.
So you mean like, so the supplements that are there?
Costing out what it would cost to level those out.
So to bring everybody up to the point where,
Right,
Both sites are.
right, because it's commensurate to the same degrees and.
Okay.
every special instructional to, you got that right, Amy? To have all special instructional
Supplements equal.
And again, I think this is an opportunity for you, because I think the idea of paying certain tested subject teachers more is kind of in your interest, not putting words in your mouth, right? But that's a number that needs to go up here too. How many tested subject people are there? How much do you propose to give them, and how much does that cost Because for me, that's the ultimate cherry on top, but if we don't write it down, we won't know what, we're all just banging around in the dark here.
Right. So we definitely have, those interests we talked about in relation to some of our highest need schools, which we've identified, and much like what we've done with turnaround, is doing the same for those schools that have been identified.
Yeah, I think the turnaround committee,
10 schools.
Yeah, those schools. And then adding, I think it was Fort Myers and Cape Coral Tech to the special center group. That may not have that big a cost. I think it's probably a couple hundred employees times $4,000, but it needs to be on the list.
Yes.
So again, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about this invoice we're writing for things. And then if we want to look at like straight compensation, like traditional raises, it'd be great if we could go back to the one a couple of years ago where, again, a tiered system of percentages and how much that would cost. So we can say $28 million for traditional raises that are outside of the the compression offset deal, and off of the bringing that up and doing the money for the people at the center schools.
So what you're proposing here as an option is a percentage raise, like a COLA type percentage raise, but tiered based on what?
Well, so over the past few years, we've kind of done it by years with the district, right? So years of credible teaching experience, sorry, that's correct. And so we have, last year was 0 years was 3.6%, 1 to 4 was 5, 5 to 9 was 9, 10 to 14 was 10, 15 to 19 was 11, and 20 plus was 12%. And
So that's not the longevity.
no, that's not like, sorry, that's raises based on kind of bands of years of credible service. Because it helps compression, but it kind of also creates compression in the band of years of experience, right? But I don't think we're ever going to get back to the days where we're not on the 5,000 different pay scales, right? We're not going to get back to those days where there are 30 steps and it's nice and even, though that ship has probably sailed both legislatively and it'll be too much work on what we've done. So again, there's a number there, right? Based on those percentages for those individual groups. And so again, I think the option is this package when built, the package is the option. And then the board is presented with, this is what the group wants to do, this is what it costs. And again, maybe it's that conversation of, well, you want to catch up the call here. Do you have any idea it's $50 million? They may not even know. And that could be the dream, but there's also kind of what be a stretch goal and a real goal, and but again, until I think they have a conversation of not how much money can we spare to give people, but how much money does it cost to give people what we want to give them, which are two separate numbers, they're going to remain in the dark about a lot of the costs of these things.
Okay, Carl?
I'll throw another option out here. Amy, I don't know if we're on 3 or 4.
I'm gonna look at
3. So you mentioned longevity. So I'll throw this out there. The pie in the sky idea was to get the 30-year plus longevity amount to $10,000. So in order to do that, we have to increase everything by 60%. And so, so right now, year 10 to 14 would be receiving $625. So under this option, it'd move it to $1,000. 15 to 19 would go to $2,000. Do you want me to just paste it in there, Amy? And let me paste this in here and I can talk about it. Find out where you're going to go. Sorry. Oh, you're good. That was really nice. It needed that format. Let me try this again. There you go.
Thank you.
There you go.
SQ is our favorite word.
Status quo. And then this would be our option 3, just written down.
It's okay. Formatting was terrible.
Yeah, that's
All right, but I think everybody can figure that out.
Thank you. I haven't had a chance to cost it out, just wrote it down.
Any questions on it? Okay, Kevin,
And I don't know if career ladder is up there, but I may not have been listed last time, but we probably are gonna get a bunch of people that are stuck on step 3 of the career ladder. There's always been the idea that there would be a step 4 and 5, that we were calling them, crazy names just made up for placeholders. There's some criteria, there's some kind of not formalized criteria for those levels. But again, you're gonna run into the idea that people kind of tap out at step 3, and we probably have our first bunch of people that have nowhere to go in the career ladder. And again, that was, the district's kind of idea to keep teachers in the classroom, because when Dr. Atkins thought about it, the idea was teachers leave the classroom and run to the front office to make more money. What can we do to keep them, to allow them to make more money, but not have them run to the front office and keep the best teachers in the classroom? And so, it's 0, 1, and 2 levels, and so 0, 1, 2, 3. And so now we're kind of getting with a group that's probably stuck on 3 with nowhere to go. And so that was also kind of pie in the sky, 8, maybe 8 for 4 and 10 for 5. And so that is going to eventually affect the whole bargaining unit. So that's a cost today, but that's going to be a hefty cost later. But, we got people stuck at 3, and they probably want somewhere to go. So that's something else. I mean, if we're building some, let's build it and cost it all out. Because again, if we don't write the numbers down, it's all theoretical.
Anybody else? I just
I think
need,
so the steps currently in career ladder, just so we're clear, so it's $1,000 for every step.
Yeah, so the first step you get 1,000, the second step you get 1,000, and you stop getting money.
Right.
And so we have a bunch of people on that third step probably by now. I mean, they're the experienced educators like me who aren't allowed to be on there. And that was also a thought of 4 and 5, is it would be open to the more experienced teachers. But yeah, so we probably have a group of people who are stuck at 3 who have only, essentially earned $2,000 for the kind of training they've done. Interesting story behind that, we used to put people where they belonged, and then people figured out if you put me on step 2, I didn't have access to the $2,000 gain if I moved there. So then we started putting everybody on step 0, even though they probably should have been put at 3, and then they got a little upset, but when you explained we're trying to get you an extra $2,000, they were happy about it. So, but the career ladder kind of needs some fixing too, and that requires attention.
okay,
So that's gonna be a little bit difficult to cost out that one, right?
Right, because we don't know how many people are gonna be at 4 or 5.
We know how many are on 40, and I think the career ladder meets tomorrow, right? Is it tomorrow? So we know how many are on 3. We have some generic kind of ideas about what the criteria are for 4 and 5. So again, in the idea that these committees should really be meeting even when we're not bargaining to develop things and bring, that could be the charge of the career ladder in the next calendar year, right? Is to get 4 and 5 done. But I'm sure we know how many people are on 3 and 2 and how many people are just brand new. That should be relatively easy. And then the criteria, we can apply that, because that's all I think run through PeopleSoft, which is why the participation is most easily defined by supplements, because that was the most trackable thing. But I'm sure we can figure that out.
okay.
I was just gonna say that I can pull reports showing who's on what grade and the date they were there. So if the criteria was, you'd be eligible for movement to 4 after 6 years or whatever it is, we have a date that they went into the
Right.
third step.
But it's not, right, but it's not it's the criteria.
We don't have a criteria on the dollar amount agreed
It's
to.
not this time, so that's what I'm saying.
Right,
There's
right.
no, if it's something that doesn't exist, there's no criteria, then there's no way to say, well, these people met the criteria that this person.
Which is why I'm saying maybe for next year.
Right, okay, so you're saying,
The committee keeps meeting, but in the back of our heads, we go, hey, this is gonna be a fix.
Understood.
okay, so that's a work on for next year.
Okay. Ron, have you wanted to say something?
Did we cover all of the interests that we talked about? What's left? Well, no, we still have to, yeah, we know what we need to do to get that.
Advanced degrees, is that?
Oh, advanced degrees? So to be clear, in advanced degrees, so anybody who has an advanced degree at this point, not necessarily. Can you re-articulate that to me as far as what you're?
Sure. So, I believe the current practice is that folks would receive a supplement for a advanced degree if it is within their area of certification. There are a number of counties across the state, would you believe it, it's not easy to find them. Not the counties, but the language, where they pay based on a whole host of other reasons. Before I mention just a couple of these, I want to preface it with, I think Polk did it right. The union and the employer went to arbitration years and years and years ago. I'll tell you the date. I want it to be like 2 years ago, I'm saying years ago. So this was 2012. Not as far back as what I thought. But basically, the arbitrator ruled that that the district could pay advanced degrees, and that they would have a kind of broad, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Broad authority in determining whether somebody was in their discretion, thank you, in their area of certification. And so I think Polk does it right. They've been paying it since then. In Hendry County, there's no language in their contract, just amounts. It's my understanding they pay it to anybody who has the degree, regardless of the area of certification. Glades does it as well. Their language says advanced degree supplements shall be added to the base salary. Pinellas, no language, just amounts. And then Collier says that it must be in the area of certification. Collier's one of the outliers. I would direct you, I don't have it ready for you, but I'd like for you to look at Palm Beach CTA. Their language is rather extensive, but I think they do a pretty good job at it. They differentiate between folks hired before 2011 and folks hired afterwards. I hate making that distinction, but that's when the law changed. But we have an interest in, if you have an advanced degree, pay them the supplement for the advanced degree. I'm not so sure that area certification, I think you could argue that getting an advanced degree in any area would add value to, to the I won't say the service that the employee is providing, but I think you understand what I'm saying. That's all.
I think for me, the best example of this is for an advanced degree in curriculum. I tell people all the time, go get it, but you're not gonna get the $2,000. But I would argue somebody with a master's or doctorate degree in curriculum probably knows better than what they're doing in the classroom. But because there's no certification area that says curriculum, in Lee County, they don't get paid. And honestly, for me, what I've seen in my 7 years of this, the practical application of this is an employee gets hired, an employee has an advanced degree. And I think the intent was, we don't want to, the legislature didn't want to reward degrees in like ed leadership, even though I could argue that makes you maybe a better employee too, because we value education. And so, yeah, you know, it is what it is. And so I think their intent was to kind of, if you want to be a better math teacher, you should probably get an advanced degree in math. Not saying that's okay or whatever, but I think that's what their intention is. So what happens is somebody gets hired. They have a master's degree, they think they're gonna get the $2,000, $2,500, they don't get it. They can't understand why, because they haven't curriculum. And then what happens typically, as I've seen, is there's a 10-year feud between the employee and the district over $2,000. Because they can't understand it. And I try to explain it, and it doesn't always hit home either, because again, we value education as an organization. And I think even though Collier says that, I have enough experience with people who went to Collier to know Collier is a little loose. So like, again, it really creates this ill will. And sometimes, and no shade towards anybody, the people that are hiring them don't necessarily know the rules either. So they say, yeah, we'll get you $2,000 for the master's degree. And then when the business end of things happen down here, it doesn't happen. And so then but the person who hired me said I would. And then the 10-year Hatfield-McCoy feud over $2,000 ensues. And that's kind of really what I've seen in my position as the practical application as Lee County does it around us. And yeah, Holt's got that arbitration, and we know it's not binding, but it could be what's the other word, not binding, but influencing. Persuasive, it could be persuasive. And so again, this is something, the law changed in 2011, this was done in 2012, so this has stood the test of time against that law, essentially since the law was passed. So, you know, again, I think from a practical employee relations point of view, it really leads to this, employees don't understand why, and it really leads to this 10 years worth of ill will. I was promised to get it by somebody who maybe didn't know the rules, and I don't understand why I'm not getting, and nobody can really explain it to me. And it's a degree, right? I think I'm a better employee for the school district of Lee County because of it.
So are you saying keeping it at this, whatever it is now, but just adding additional people who can get that supplement?
Yeah, I think that was it, and I think honestly, last time we may have costed that out.
We were using numbers
Yeah,
here.
it may have been, and so everybody who's eligible who doesn't get it would be the additional cost. I think at some point we looked at $3 or $4 million was the total cost of this to kind of make it right, and I think there's, and again, this is all going from 5 years ago conversations, right? There was a way to make it a component of pay as well. So not to skirt the rule, but pay it as a component of pay as opposed to a supplement, because again, in everything we do, we always want everything FRSable. You know, that's the key component is to add it to somebody's kind of salary that gets counted for retirement. And there are like 30 rules around that I can't remember.
Okay, Rob, why don't you pass the microphone to Rob, please?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. So the law was changed last year because in 2011, Kevin's right, it was made very restrictive. It not only had to be in your area of certification, but it had to be in the area you were teaching in. The teaching in language, and I'm paraphrasing, was removed, but it still has to be in an individual's area of certification. So if you have a master's in basket weaving and you're teaching band, you can't get the certification. No, I wasn't talking to
Sorry, Louis, that's the way it is.
I said that for podcast Milano, we used to see that. But anyway. So anyway, the area of certification restriction is still in the law. And I just want everybody to be aware of that. We can't just award for a master's that's not in something you're not certified in.
Okay.
That was part of,
I think
that was day one.
when we brought that to the table, just for clarification, because it didn't seem to be some clear and concise
Language or whatever we, based on what we had in the contract, we thought was okay with the law change, but it really,
I think what Rob just
clarified, removing the area that you actually teach in is the difference.
Anna?
I think through a lot of discussions that I've heard, it comes down a lot to people who have curriculum instruction degrees, people who have, like I have 3 classes to finish teaching and learning, no desire to finish it. There's some teachers that may have, I think that, you know, like they have like a math degree, but they're not like a math coach or, so I think, you know, I don't know how many people have basket weaving degrees, but I think really when we look at, I know we may have had some data, if we really look at what those degrees are, who's not getting that supplement, we may see that it is a lot of commonalities there, and oftentimes a lot of people who move down here from up north have missed out on that master's pay that other states were recognizing it, and now they're not getting it here, so just kind of evening that out.
Coming, Louis.
First of all, just for clarification, my master's is not in underwater basket weaving.
Okay.
It's an underwater basket.
Yes, it's a specialty. But actually, as a part of the story on this, I did come from out of state to teach here in Florida. And I have a master's degree in teaching, which is a very popular degree that is starting up now to help people get alternative certification. So technically, my master's degree is a Master of Arts in Teaching in Secondary Education, which is technically, I do teach in secondary education. My certification is K-12 music. But I was not able to get that supplement because my master's was not in music, which is, and I guess so now that since that language has been removed, then that's where it becomes a problem in interpretation. So, you know, where are we drawing the line now? So.
Okay, thank you. Need to go the other way, no, okay.
Rocky, you want to say? No.
No, I just saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, and I don't want to discount what Kerr said. I mean, I think the word discretion does come into play here. But what we have to do is change the language in the contract, if we all want to conform with the statute, which would then permit HR and the union to come up with some rules as to how this should or should not be applicable. I say this, being the attorney for HR, that someone with a degree in teaching
But you can't get certified.
and a master's in teaching, right? Is that what you said? Is it? Yeah.
Master's in teaching.
Yes,
And he teaches band.
in secondary education.
I mean, it seems as though that person, frankly, should be eligible, but that's just me.
The one that typically comes into question is a master's in curriculum instruction. So, in every state differs, right, Kurt? Is that what you're
County, yes. Which, I'm glad you brought that up. That brings me back to Palm Beach. They have good language. You don't have to copy all this down, but it says an employee holding an advanced degree in guidance and counseling, conflict dispute resolution, computer, technology, curriculum and instruction, teaching and learning, or ESE will be granted an advanced degree supplement under this section. So there is some language in the CBA that allows them, gives them that discretion to add this.
And you think that's in compliance with the? Okay.
And it's our model language. It's been tested over the course of a few years.
Okay.
Because as Rob mentioned, they struck the word not. It used to say a district school board may not use. Now it says may use. But they struck the if hired on or after July 1st, 2011, because the rules used to be different for those that were hired before July 1st, 2011. So that was struck. And they struck and is only a salary supplement, which goes to Mr. Daly's point about it being a component of pay. So I'll send you that language. I think it's workable.
Do you want an option?
Maybe that's an option 4. Pay advanced degree supplement to all bargaining unit employees who hold an advanced degree.
Kurt didn't want to say it, but the Palm Beach language also included basket weaving. So as the non-attorney at the table, I would like to take my toenail and stick it right over the line and dare somebody to snitch. But that's the non-attorney in me.
As a component of pay, I hear that right?
I said, who hold an advanced degree?
No, it can be a component.
Can't be a
Can be.
Yes, but not be a component.
Do we, I'm looking at Kirsten, I don't know if you have this information, do we have a way of going through PeopleSoft to see anybody who does have an advanced degree?
Amy does.
Brian?
The genius.
Do, but what is in there isn't necessarily the most accurate, because if people aren't going to.
Right, if they're not gonna get money, they're not gonna tell you.
They're not turning in their degree. So.
And can we add after the word members who hold an advanced degree? Sorry, that's my cursor there. That's why you thought you were typing. I don't feel comfortable just mucking with the minutes, so I'm gonna ask you.
Okay. Anything else?
This is just a question, because we've been talking about advanced degrees and the subject. Where's the thought process in regards to our individuals who are CTE teachers that don't have a teaching degree? I'd like to have that addressed as part of this also, because as the state has regressed from 6 to 3 years to be hired, well, it's good to try and attract more people that way. What are your thoughts in regards to working teachers coming from the career field and years of experience?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I actually was out at one of the tech centers last week talking with them.
This is our K-12.
Oh, K-12 too?
Yeah, this has to be brought, high school coach.
High schools, yeah, so, but again, I think, yeah, and the best story I have about this really comes from a tech center, where a gentleman owned an air conditioning company and was hired as an HVAC instructor, but was not given experience as an HVAC instructor because their name was on the side of the truck and not on the shirt, on the uniform. And so I think we need to talk about that idea, because, and again, not to like divide the groups up, but sometimes the CTE people, like, again, and I don't want to call them out by name, but there's a gentleman who teaches at one of the high schools who, if he was not a teacher, would make a significant amount of money. Now, he had a long career in that field and essentially retired and became a teacher of one of the CTE programs. So I think we need to do as much as we legally can to be able to kind of take away the barriers to make employees happy and to give employees kind of the experience and the respect they're due for the things they've done. Because I think they were telling me, and this may be the same as K through 12, that Fort Myers Tech or whatever, they have to show like their AS, the auto mechanics people, whatever, that sort of AC or whatever certified, they have to renew that certification, but that's not good enough for the state or something, so they have to do it again. So I think we need to, or for the district. So I do think we need to look at those barriers and kind of knock down as many of those barriers as possible to be able to recruit and retain and compensate all of the employees who, and again, all three of my children went through the career and tech ed programs at South, right? Our career and tech K-12 and post-secondary create graduates who earn better than minimum wage, who are ready to enter the workforce, and who make real contributions to people around them if they're not interested in getting the traditional college degree. So again, I think we do need to kind of look at some of those barriers, and as somebody who is an ESE English teacher, I'm not sure I know what all those barriers are, so maybe we have that conversation too about what the barriers are, and see what we can do to knock those down. But that's certainly, again, I want to knock down those barriers too, because we do need to be able to hire people to teach nursing, to produce the CNAs and the nursing students and the plumbers and the HVAC people and all of those people that this community so desperately needs.
Okay, we have been in our seats for about an hour and a half. Do we need a little break?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, 10, 15? Rod?
Are we close to done? Do I take a break if we're close to done?
I don't know if we're close to
I
done.
don't know either, that's what I'm asking.
Can we call it a caucus instead of a break?
We sure
All
can.
right, perfect, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's call it 15, because we've talked a lot. I've spoken a lot, and Kurt's spoken a lot, so let's talk to the other people.
The draft isn't tonight, you don't have to be home quickly.
the caucus, so would you like to give us a caucus report, please?
Sure thing. We discussed the slew of options that are out there. We discussed, we started to discuss Thursday. I'm curious what may be on the agenda for Thursday, if that will be enough time for some of the data requests that we've asked for. And we started talking about pay of school board members and whether that is tied to starting teacher pay. So that's how we wrapped up our caucus.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
The pay of school board members and how that relates to starting teacher pay. Is if they're tied and there's an increase to starting teacher pay, then school board member pay goes up as a direct result. So that's how we ended our caucus.
And your caucus, sir?
Kind of focus back on the interest that, we discussed or maybe haven't yet discussed, as opposed to, what we're ready at this point to present as options. So, from the district management standpoint, again, reiterating what some of those interests are. Obviously, we have a common interest, a couple common interests. We think we need to be competitive with our starting salaries. We also want to make sure that, some of our schools that may have more struggles than others, that, we provide those kinds of incentives, much like we do with turnaround, for teachers to do that. That is certainly within the interest of the district to make sure that, we do that properly based on what we've seen data-wise over the past few years. I don't feel, and this is nothing that we haven't discussed in turnaround today. But again, we don't feel like what we have been doing has actually been working or us accomplishing what we set out to do with that committee. So that is certainly one of our main interests to look at how we can further incentivize both those schools and obviously then, the local report card and those kinds of things and the student achievement that is associated with that is of interest as well. So that's why we're looking at, what are those tested areas and how do we make sure that, we're incentivized for our staff to take on some of the, hardest work that we have within the district. And then, obviously being fiscally responsible. We all know that we have limited resources and allocate those resources where, we feel like we need to allocate those resources so that we're getting the most out of those resources. So those are the interests, again, that we discussed as a bargaining team and how will that fit in the proposal?
Okay, thank you. And I think Kern had kind of a question in his caucus report. Will you be able to have the requested information from tonight's session by Thursday?
There may be one or two pieces that we can communicate that maybe as how far along that we've gotten in collecting the data and can we, we have a placeholder for that. Can we just continue that conversation to see really, and I understand to the points that were brought up before, we need to take full advantage of the time. I'm just not sure, again, with what we have. I think we collected a lot of information tonight to help make us, some informed conversation that we're going to have with the board. But why don't can we do that, Kurt? Just kind of keep each other posted?
Yeah, I think the concern here, at a risk of being too frank, is I just don't want to waste everybody's time. If we're going to come and just have poor questions or not get anywhere, I'd rather let people know so that they don't have to drive halfway across the county. But we could call that tomorrow. If you want to, but I think that's my concern.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was part of the conversation. And I think, again, we've collected a lot of information that, we can cost out and provide. And again, we can add some of these right to the agenda, because there are data requests. And then why don't we do that?
Is it everything that I kept on that spreadsheet you want? Is that what you're talking about with that request?
I need to see the spreadsheet again, I don't remember.
While she's pulling that up, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I'm sitting here typing away, I'm like, it's right there.
No, it's not right there.
A piece of paper would have been right there.
Just a small remark on the incentives. We understand where you're coming from with incentivizing certain positions. One of my concerns is that incentivizing certain positions creates a have and have not situation, where some folks are rewarded, but others who may be facing something that is different, but equally as challenging are then overlooked. I'm reminded a few years ago, in some of our discussions with a school board member, we talked about this in turnaround, just doing a supplement based on the zone or supplement based on it. Those things make me uneasy, just from the onset. Because TALC has taken a standpoint, or maybe not a standpoint, but TALC's interest is in doing the most for the most, and kind of carving out some of those, I fear, it leaves people in a situation where you get this and I don't get that, and it creates some division in the workforce and affects morale.
So is this what we're talking about?
Can you just make that slightly better, please?
And why people kind of look at that. I also want to know, like, so this is really a frank question. How much, right? Because with the old BDIS model, in order to move to a school to be effective, I think it was $7,500, $15,000. The district found $7,500 wouldn't move people. So this year we negotiated it to be $10,000 and $15,000. So like, are you giving them an extra $1,000 to teach third grade? Like, so, I mean, at some point, like, there used to be a $10,000 supplement to drive to a mile. And there wasn't enough. So that's also the deal, like.
And again, part of the interest-based process is both, management and employees have interest. And we can't say that your interests don't matter, or my interests don't matter, and those kind of things. So those are interests, those specifically understand the response to that. But just, feel obligated to say what the interests are, again, to reiterate those.
And I get that, but I think that's the ultimate cherry on top, right? After we fix some other, for me, that's a lower priority than giving everybody a raise so they don't have to work second jobs. Or to move starting pay and then passing that through to other people so we can recruit as well as retain, as opposed to rewarding the third grade teachers who teach a tested subject. And, that's the ultimate cherry on top. For me, that's we've accomplished the other things. And we even have enough money for this. Because I don't want to not give 80% of the people a raise because 20% of the people teach a tested subject. That's a recipe for disaster. And so once everybody makes enough, then yeah, if we got money, that's cool. But everybody ain't making enough. And we're far below our geographical colleagues in this regard.
So just one more thing. We did we did talk about, again, when we sat down for interest-based bargaining, and we went through this process. So we thought, maybe it'd be a good idea if we really just kind of go over the financial situation of the district, have some conversations about that previous to, again, going to the board and asking for authority. I think we've taken that to another level, as we, tried to really figure out, what all this costs. And so that's kind of, maybe. It's just, I guess it's maybe a different approach than maybe we talked about before, which is fine. If that's what we decide as the bargaining teams, that's fine. But I guess wasn't really expecting that. So I didn't want to seem like that's not, what we were trying to accomplish, but I don't feel like that's what the directive was, that based on the interest-based bargaining training, that was the route that we would take to get there.
But I would argue we have a revenue problem. And the first step in any 12-step program is admitting you have a problem. And until we admit we have a problem and show the numbers, The problem doesn't exist. And so again, like, I understand we don't have any money, but, you know, we don't know how much it costs to fix the problem if we don't talk about how much it costs to fix the problem. And again, we're gonna fall further behind Collier. I can just predict that now, because they get more money per kid. We're gonna fall further behind Collier. We're probably not gonna catch up to Hendry, we're definitely not gonna catch up to Charlotte. But again, if we don't have the conversation around what the problem is, and what the fix is for the problem and the cost of the fix, the problem is theoretical. This is a way for us to say, this is the cost of fixing the problem. If we are really committed to fixing this problem, we need to figure out how to get this money. And whether that's lobbying in Tallahassee for a better budget, or whether that's some kind of locally generated source, we have to have that conversation about what things cost to fix the problem, to recruit and retain the best teachers we can when faced with competition that right now we aren't even close to.
Okay. Anybody else?
Are these things you want data on? I guess that's still.
They're gonna need to be between us, already a split.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, it wasn't clear on what the thing we did there.
I think we're talking about the post-secondary and secondary CTE, that would be the most common.
Is that what her wanted for this one?
Can you clarify, I feel that I'm conflating the two issues.
I
Was it
think,
around,
I think number one is we wanted them added to the special centers.
Right, those two post-secondary groups are added to the special center list.
Okay, but I also thought we talked about adding secondary.
So you want to add just the secondary teachers at South Fort Myers High School.
No, all.
But I'm saying, so for an example, the people that teach CTE at South Fort Myers High School all get an extra 4,000 because they teach CTE.
I'd like to have a discussion, find out the cost, but yeah.
yeah,
Not,
So that's-
I'm not sure that's the logic behind the center school thing.
but these are CTE folks. There's more than just the technology. I appreciate you putting them there, but I think we need to have that conversation about those secondary CTE teachers because they face the same type of problem.
so is this similar to the completions, I can't remember what it was.
No, that's actually the industry certification.
Industry certificate, this is
And-
separate from industry certs.
I believe so, yes.
Can you speak to it a little bit more, because I'm conflating the two.
Hold on, let me get your mic, Brian.
And can we say what CTE is, please?
Career and
Technical education.
So the career and technical education folks in the secondary world, and some of them, as Kevin spoke about before, come to us and are given a local vocational certification to teach. A few years ago, they need to have 6 years of verified experience in the industry. They moved it down to 3, which is fine because it helps us recruit more individuals. However, are we going to take a look at recognizing those secondary CTE teachers? Because it's more than just high school. Some of them are in the middle school. And to recognize their years of experience, much like we're talking about those advanced degrees. I think that if they had more experience in the field, it could be more valuable to us.
All right, that makes sense, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
So, maybe it needs to change that.
So,
Number 9 needs to be about the years of experience.
so it's years experience, not the special center?
I think the special center is number 8.
No.
I was mixing the two together in my head.
Okay. So CT secondary teachers to receive industry certification.
Based on years of experience.
Years experience credit, much like we're over.
Similar to advanced degrees.
Yeah, but considering their industry experience, not there, because some of them have nothing but a high school diploma from a formal, and they could have 20 years in the industry.
Does that work for you, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, any clarification on? Okay. Okay, anything else? I got it. Yeah.
I have something while I have it. Ron, do you have an update from FMTC and CCTC about the certification, industry certification budget plan thing?
I got it.
Okay.
I do. I received it from them, the proposal.
All right, Heather?
We might need to tweak that language some more, because maybe I misunderstood you, but a lot of special instructional, while we do get our advanced degree supplement, we don't get any years' experience unless you've already started within the district, bringing it in.
But that would be the way to provide it, based on their, because you don't have an advanced degree. There's no other way to prove their experience other than their years in the field.
So are we
No,
going to
she's saying for her.
the special instructional experience crapshoot?
I don't, that's.
I mean, I think what she's asking is, because honestly, we don't typically do this, right? When we make a change, we don't go back, we only move forward. And so I think you're looking for going back and fixing things that occurred maybe 20 years ago. But then every teacher that has ever done that and gotten some kind of, I don't want to say raw deal, but negative outcome, will also be asking the same thing, so. I mean,
Can I kind of, I might be able to provide a different perspective. So as a former career tech center person, in another state, because those folks didn't have like the degree requirements and the opportunity to do that. So if I had 10 years of, and some of them are capped, so up to 10 years of experience then would move you, on the pay scale to credit that, because they don't have the opportunity again to gain advanced degrees or those kind of things. But they can for additional industry certifications possibly. So what we have currently is in the contract for career tech ed is the amount of students, kind of like ACE and some of the other things that we have. So if a student passes their certification, there's additional compensation that goes along.
Kevin?
related to number 9, does that problem exist at FMTC and Cape Coral Technical College too, right? They don't necessarily get the years of experience they're owed when they get onboarded because of the same problem, right?
I would think that's post-secondary.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So maybe 9 expands to cover those schools too.
Secondary and post-secondary.
I mean, I also think it's important for us to understand that we're probably never going to be able to pay somebody who teaches HVAC the equivalent of what they would make if they were in somebody's HVAC system. And so, and I think we need to say that out loud, because I think maybe there's an impression that we're gonna, and we're moving towards it. But I think, that was the discussion I had to have with the guy at South for a while, was you're no longer that occupation, you're a teacher of that occupation. And so I just don't want to get people kind of false hope for the idea that they're going to get all this experience and they're going to make just as much as they were making when they were out as a lineman or a plumber or a welder or a nurse in a hospital. It's probably not going to happen.
Okay. Anything else? We're up here.
Trying to clarify, so I. So these are what you want, costed, you have additional data requests. You need me to go back.
You're talking about costing things out as data requests?
Yeah, I don't know if that's what I'm wondering, if that's what's there.
Yeah, I think, we want the cost of those things in the spreadsheet.
Read that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I think that's gonna clarify.
Maybe additional 30 minutes.
Can you go back to the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
You scroll up to the top of the spreadsheet.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
Was the additional 30 minutes one along?
She gave us that.
Yeah, we got that.
Oh, one, we forgot one,
What?
extended workday.
Oh, thank you.
I knew there was something I was missing.
Do we want to toss that out in a half an hour increment?
Yes.
But, so I think, and so for me, that's an extra half an hour, 4 days, so that's an extra 2 hours.
You were at 7.
We're not at 7.6, no, we're at 7.5, 4 days, and 8, 1 day. It averages to 7.6, so I think we need to look at it as a half an hour over 4 days to make all the days 8 hours, as opposed to going to 0.4, because then on the days you're working 7.5, somebody might go, well, I don't have to work 8, I only have to work 7.9. So let's just go to an 8-hour day every day, which is 2 extra hours of pay a week.
4 days.
Got it.
Glades is going to 4 days.
We want to be competitive.
Glades is discussing going to 4 days.
4-day work week?
Yep,
Yeah.
4-day school week and work
Yeah.
week.
Go to the doctor.
They just started talking about it.
That's what we said this morning.
I guess it takes an hour and a half to go to the doctor in Glades County, you gotta go somewhere.
All right, anything else?
Not for tonight, guys.
I think we're good.
We're good for tonight?
Yep.
And as far as Thursday, people will know tomorrow if we're gonna meet Thursday or not?
Yes.
Okay?
At what time?
At what time tomorrow?
We have a couple of meetings tomorrow, so we'll be together by the end of the day.
By COB. It starts before the end.
It doesn't start till Thursday.
Oh, it's not till.
Tomorrow's Wednesday.
You gotta make plans.
Just plan to be here then. You'll be here alone.
Ron, your team will screw it up second. His team will screw it up.
Actually, we're not gonna be here Thursday if we're meeting Thursday. We're in media 1 and 2.
So if you don't have anything better, come to the CTE showcase.
7 in the room.
That's right, that's why we're not here. I forgot about that, Brian. Thank you, Brian. All right, have a good evening, everyone.